if we're talking about the future of Bitcoin, I think that we're in the Bitcoin gold rush era. And it started in January of 2024, and it will run till about November of 2034. It's a 10-year. And the reason people that use fiat currency, we call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. There's a name for them. We call them poor. And when those spot ETFs were approved, that created a fire or an avalanche. The genie's out of the bottle. It doesn't matter who's elected president next. It doesn't matter who's the next head of the SEC. It doesn't matter. And no politician's opinion, no banker opinion, no regulator opinion matters after that date. That was the most consequential thing that kicked off the gold rush. Now, as of the first quarter of this year, which is we're in now, right? February 29th, March 1st. What's the date?
March
I
1st.
get my dates messed up in leap years because everything's off by a day. But you know, every single institutional investor would have looked at this and said, Bitcoin interesting, but I can't buy it. You know, everybody. And so you have 99% of the money in the world that has been unable to buy and so unwilling to consider things. Institutional investors are like this. Like they could watch your company and like have a million opinions but don't really care. And you could go to them on a Tuesday morning and say, do you want to buy $50 million worth of this security? And they'll then look at it and they'll give you an answer by 4 p.m. So when they can buy via their bank, their institutional wirehouse, their prime broker, they will make a $50 million decision in 1 hour. And they will watch you and cheer for you or laugh at you for 20 years when they can't buy. So we flipped a switch in January. What you've got is 40 quarters of people getting educated, and here's what happens next. All those ETFs, they're only distributed through 20% of the distribution channel right now. They're maybe even 10%. So that distribution is going to go from 10% to 20 to 40 to 60 to 80. And there'll be a point at which all the investors can buy. And, you know, I had to fill out, you have to fill out 3 waivers from 3 different accounts, as of a few weeks ago. So you're going to see resistance drop. You're going to see all the major banks add support. Then the next question is, well, is it creditworthy? Can I borrow against the asset? No major bank in the world will give you a loan against those ETFs yet. They've all got clocks that are running after 30 days, after 90 days, after 6 months, after a year. So first they let you buy it, then they loan you money against it. None of those instruments can you trade options on. You can't buy or sell puts and calls on a spot ETF. That'll be a year. So what you're going to see is it'll take years for the distribution to open up, for the credit capillaries to work, for the volatility trading to kick in, for the hedging to kick in. Then you'll actually see all the big banks that don't like Bitcoin getting pressured. Like now we have to custody it because our biggest customer wants us to. So right now you can't custody, but there's a big battle afoot on Capitol Hill. That battle will take place. Bitcoin will win that battle. Then you'll see banks custody, then you'll see 1, then you'll see 10, then you'll see 100, then you'll see 1,000. And likewise, there's famous analysts. You can name the analysts that cover Bitcoin today. Len Alden, Chris Kuiper, right? Yassine, right? There'll be a day when there'll be 200. You won't be able to name them all, right? There'll be a day when Bitcoin ETFs have already blasted past gold, and then Bitcoin ETFs trade more than the S&P index ETFs. And there'll be a day, I believe, when Bitcoin ETFs will have more capital than SPY or the S&P index. And on that day, the people at Vanguard will say, oops, I guess all the money just shifted out of equity. But that day won't come tomorrow. It'll take many, many quarters. And by the time we get to 2034, I think you can say the high growth institutional adoption phase of Bitcoin has now moved to just the growth phase.
Do it, right? In the meantime, we got a decade, right? And in that meantime, while you can, you need to buy some. You gotta get as much as you humanly possibly can right now. Fuck all those other investments. They might be fun. Have a great time. Whatever you're doing, you don't have to get rid of all of it, but put a good percentage, as much as you humanly possibly can, right here, right there, what you learned and heard right now. That's where you want to be.
People that use fiat currency, we call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. There's a name for them. We call them poor. We call them poor. Okay? Right? Like, the point is, if you have the superior asset, it's going up forever, Laura. Forever.
Right, but we can all look Bitcoin sort of as
forever, Laura. People that use fiat currency as a store of value, we call them poor. We call them poor. People that use fiat currency, we call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor. There's a name for them. We call them poor. We call them poor. We call them poor.